Welcome back to Junkfoot Jr. Check out this time capsule. What do we have here? None other than a 1990 C1500 Mark III conversion truck. So at the time, in the early 90s, this was the nicest truck you could get. It was the Escalade or Denali of its kind. It was sent to Mark III up in Ocala, Florida, after it left the GM, assembly plant, dealership, whatever. I'm not sure what order they did that, but they do their conversion on. They put two-tone paint. It's got custom wood inserts inside, and it's a great truck. But what are we going to do to it, and why are we going to do it? Well, it's a special project because it was my Pawpaws truck. He bought it in 1990 when I was just 4 years old, and I remember riding in this thing as a kid. So many good memories riding in the back seat of this truck. And it became my dad's truck, and my dad decided to take the 350 out and build it into a 383. So the project kind of starts to get a little bit crazy there. Let me show you underneath the hood of this jewel. So it appears to be bone stock underneath the hood, with the exception that my dad made it a 383 and changed the intake manifold. Problem is, that was a great idea, and we put the stock camshaft back in it, hoping that the factory fuel injection would work, but guess what? It didn't. So we took the factory fuel injection off, and then we put a Holley up under there. It's the Terminator Stealth, and the ECU is mounted right over here in between the battery on the fender well there. So now we have fuel injection that can handle anything we throw at it, right? But when we initially did this with my dad, we were trying to keep it stock so that we didn't have to worry about the fuel injection not working, but then it became problematic and didn't work anyway, so now we had to put all this stuff on it. So where does that put us with the truck now? Well, I don't know how many miles are on the truck because the odometer's broke. Speedometer works though. The transmission, she's just about shot. It's the factory 700 R4. It leaks out quite a bit of fluid if you park it overnight, so it's got some kind of a big drain down leakage situation that's just not good. It leaves a mess everywhere you park it. So I don't like that, and the transmission's getting real sloppy on those shifts anyway, so geez, what the next step is the engine. Okay, well, it's got a lifter that ticks pretty hard when you first fire it up after it bleeds down overnight. So now we need to pull the intake manifold to change the lifter. I don't know which lifter is bad, so we're going to throw all new lifters in it. Well, if the transmission's bad and the engine's got to come, and the intake has to come off because the lifters need to come out, well, now we might as well put a camshaft in it that's going to make a little more power. The other thing is, there's a lot of things here. So with that stock camshaft and this thing being a 383, we figured the compression on it best we could without taking the whole engine apart, but based on how my dad liked to build things, and it's going to be somewhere around 9.8 to 1, so that should be fine on pump gas, but it rattles really hard, even with extremely retarded timing, like 24 degrees. It shouldn't be rattling with the timing that low, but it is. So the only theory that we have is that the camshaft being so small in factory is closing the exhaust valve so fast and not bleeding off anything that it's just building too much compression because of the camshaft. It's kind of a stretch, but it's definitely possible. I don't know. I mean, everything else, lines up and, jives and points towards that. So we're going to put a new cam in it as well. So this little project to get this truck, dialed in has kind of snowballed like life happens in any automotive project. So it's going to get a new transmission, it's going to get a new camshaft, new lifters, then we can reprogram the Holley fuel injection to work with all that stuff. We're going to keep everything really basic the way that it is. I'm not going to mess with electric fans. We're just going to keep the shroud and just put everything back as much as we can the way it is. I'm not even going to put headers on it yet. We're just going to leave the manifolds, and the goal is to do transmission and camshaft and get this truck back on the road as a solid run and driving piece. Now, there are some things that I want to do to it in the future, so that'll be a whole nother time frame and episode at a later date. But for now, we're going to stick with camshaft, transmission. That's the two main goals for this truck. So what transmission are we going to put in the truck? Well, it's right over here. Luckily, we've got some friends. Friend says, hey, I put a new transmission in my car. Do you know anybody who wants to buy the old one? Yeah, I'll take that. Yes, please. TKO600 Tremec. That is going to be a killer transmission. So we're going to go from a 700 R4 automatic, and we're going to make this truck a stick shift. It's going to be so cool. Then we've got clutch pedal down here, hydraulic clutch assembly. So we've got to set it up for the throwout bearing and all that. We've got gaskets so we can do the cam swap. Oh, I did get a pressure switch too for the safety switch. And new camshaft, nothing too crazy. Got our bell housing there, so got a whole pile of parts accumulated for this truck, and it's just been waiting on me. So now that we've finally gotten to that point of having all our parts on standby, it's time to start tearing this truck apart. Let's get some fluids out of it, unbolt a few bolts and brackets, odds and ends. Before you know it, engine and transmission's out of this dude, and we're ready to go back together with the new stuff. First step, get that coolant dripping out of there. I didn't pull the cap off because I didn't want it to come out too fast and make a mess. It's controllable the way it is. I can walk away from it, let it drain, come back later, and it'll be done. One more thing. So why would Junior go from a 700R4 factory truck to the manual transmission? Well, one hard to figure out. It's money related. So the amount that I got the TKO600 for is what it was going to cost to have the 700R4 rebuilt, and it came with, you know, bell housing, shifter, flywheel, clutch. So I was kind of like, man, this is a no-brainer. I only have to buy a few things to go with that. So did I still spend money? Yes, but I didn't have to buy a, you know, $400 some torque converter neither. So it's all, and it's not really a wash, but it just to me made sense. It was a good deal. It'll make the truck more fun to drive, and eventually it might be Weston's truck, so then he can have fun playing around with a stick shift truck and learn how to drive on it. And you know, it's the classic millennial anti-theft device, so why not? But it's a good enough deal, had to go for it. There's that Terminator Stealth I was telling you about. And the cool part is the factory air cleaner just goes right on it, so it's really a sleeper factory clean look when it's all together. So I spent yesterday afternoon and some of this morning getting all the crap unbolted off the engine, all the wirings pulled back and out of the way. Pretty sure I've got everything loose, so we're ready to get this engine and transmission out of here. Got the transmission crossmember, you know, bolt already out. The exhaust is disconnected. Obviously, the manifolds are off. So everything I can think of is done and out of the way. Nothing to it but start jacking up this engine, and let's see if we can slide this whole thing out. Hoping to do it with leaving the hood on. That'd be really nice. One less thing to have to align and try to, you know, balance and keep from scratching and all that. So we're going to give it a shot without pulling the hood, see if we can get both the engine and transmission out. All right, moment of truth. Start putting a little tension on it, see how this thing's going to act. Of course, the back end's going to drop down a country mile once it comes off the cross member when we slide it forward, but let's just see what this thing does. There we go. Get it pop out of those mounts. Keep going a little higher. We'll get it above the mounts, and then we can slide it forward. Okay, hold on, what you got, because we don't want to bust the distributor cap back there. I didn't take that off. So there goes that. Clicks, clicks. Okay, take her up a little more. All right, what are we hung up on? Sounds like something over here. I think it's just a transmission line that we're not going to be using anymore. Go ahead and jack it up some more, Weston. There she comes. All right, let me come back here and help give this thing a little tug. Get this squared up. All right, pick her up some more. Well, so much for that. We're up against the hood. Maybe if I'd have had another link out of here, we'd have been able to sneak it by, but that's as far as we can get. I even put a ratchet strap on there just to try to give us a little more angle, hoping to get it up out of there, but it's just not working in our favor, so it's time to pull the hood, and then we got a big mess to clean up down there. I sucked out all the transmission fluid, but not that part I didn't. Had to call in some reinforcements to get the hood off, but now the hood's out of the way, you got plenty of room to jack that engine up and get it on out of there. So Weston's on the engine hoist over there. Engine's coming right on out with the transmission. Goodbye 700R4, you are not going back in Pawpaws' truck. You've been a good one, but hey, it's time for change. What a hole. Boy, does it need some cleaning up. So I think the next order of business is to roll this truck outside and degrease and pressure wash everything just so we have a nice, fresh, clean start. I mean, this is the time to do it. But I know how this goes. As soon as I get it clean, it's like, oh, well, that has a little more surface rust than I'd like. We should paint that stuff black. So next thing you know, we'll be painting frame rails black, control arms, and inner fender wells. So this is going to get out of hand really quick, and I know it. But while it's out, that's certainly the time to do it. So the engine's out, transmission, obviously, we did that. Weston's cleaning up the floor from the mess we made. Engine-wise, what do we do here? Well, it's kind of weathered. It's not that old, so it's kind of a bummer that the paint didn't hold up on the edges and stuff better than it did. So I think before we take it apart, I'm going to go ahead and take a wire brush on a drill and get in all the little nooks and crannies. And, you know, like this kind of stuff, even though it's on the back of the head, it just drives me crazy because the fronts are pretty much the same way. So I want to get all that loose, flaky stuff off there, get it cleaned up, a little more presentable, and then we can go ahead and pull it apart to do the cam swap. And if we get a little overspray on the intake, well, that doesn't matter because I want to blast it to repaint it anyways, and just get everything spiffed up. Now's the time to do it. So still got a lot of work ahead of us, but time-consuming work, little things that will make a huge difference when this truck goes back together. It'll be a much cleaner, more presentable product. Well, that worked good. It's much cleaner-ish. It looks worse because we got rid of all the grease and factory undercoat that was on the frame to start with. So it looks a whole lot worse. But I kind of knew that was the deal. It's gonna create more work. But while the engine's out, this is the time to do this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and degrease it one more time just to get any, light residue off anything, now that all the thick stuff's off of there. And then we can let it dry, and eventually we'll get a coat of paint on this thing before we put it all back together, so that way everything's nice, sealed up, and preserved for many years in the future. Well, we got everything degreased, and it's really hard to draw that line of, okay, this is where we're going to stop. This is going to be good enough. Gosh dang, I am not good at drawing a line like that. And I knew this was going to snowball like this, like I told you earlier, but we're just at the point where you can't not do it. So I went ahead and pulled out the lower fan shroud. What I didn't get pressure washed out of there, I vacuumed out the trough there, pulled the charcoal canister, some odds and ends, stuff like that, so that while I climb my fat butt in there to paint all this stuff, I'm just going to start as far back as I can on the frame rails and work my way forward and try not to make too much of a mess. Loosen up all these lines so I can, pick them up, get them out of the way, and set them back down in place there. I mean, I'm not doing a complete, frame off restoration here, but I do want it to be better if I can make it better. So that's what we're going to do. Then eventually, by the way, what are we going to paint it with? Good old POR 15. So you can paint right over any of that little surface rust that's on there, and it converts it and seals it up, so you don't have to worry about it in the future, and it looks really good. Well, then once we get that stuff done, then our fender wells are looking kind of rough. So before the truck goes back together completely, I'll wind up pulling those inner fender wells out and get a nice coat of paint on those, inside and underside. That way everything's looking nice and fresh under here. This is the time to do it. I have to do it. I can't put an engine back in on a rusty frame like that. I just ain't got it in me. So we are halfway-ish done. I didn't want to paint myself in a corner, so I only did half the truck. But there is the before, the passenger side frame rail. And there's the after. What a difference. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, but it's 100% better than it was, and it's all the stuff that you're going to see. I am going to try and paint a little bit through the fender well, get the frame rail done there, pull that tire off just so the outside's spiffed up as well. It is so much better. My gosh, is that satisfying to not have those rusty, chalky, dried out looking frame rails on this truck. It is very nice. So now we've got to sit on and let paint dry. Like I said, eventually I'll get these inner fender wells out so we can get those spiffed up too. Some battery acid had dripped on there at some point in time. So we need to get that stuff taken care of. We want this truck to last a long time. And like I say, it's going to be Weston's truck. So let's just take our time, get this thing dialed in. We don't have to come back and do it again later. I mean, sure, we might have the motor out tinkering, doing something else. I have no idea. It could be LS swapped in the future. I don't know. But for now, we're going to do the best we can, take our time, do it right, and it'll be a really cool piece when it's all done. So we're going to end this one off here. We still got a lot of work to do to get this thing back together, but thank y'all for watching Junk Jr. Hope y'all enjoyed it. See you next time.